Hello and welcome to our session, Life After Legacy Consolidation Applications. So my name's Ash, I'm the CEO for inlumi. I'm joined by my colleague Marco. If you're watching live, please feel free to ask any questions or make any comments in the chat. We'll be monitoring it and we'll respond to them as we go. There'll also be some time at the end for any questions you may have. If you're watching a recording, you can contact either Marco or I or anyone else at inlumi through the registration and contact details that you have, and we'll definitely get back to you. So if you've joined this session, it's because you're using HFM, BPC, BFC, Cognos Controller, or one of the other market-leading consolidation systems out there. The list that I've just said represents the majority of large organizations in the world, and they're some of the most successful consolidation platforms that there have ever been. But like all good things, life changes and technology and platforms move on. So the characteristic that they have in common, which is driving some of the changes we see in the market now that we're going to talk about, their architecture is out of date. A lot of them are moving towards end of life, so they're not being updated anymore, haven't been, which means skills and other things are becoming short. And as you move as an organization, the question is, should you continue to invest or find something new? The other characteristic is that they're really good at one thing, whereas the platforms we see on the market now are good at multiple things. So that's what we're going to talk about. What's out there in the market? What can you expect? Some examples of what others are doing, and then some practical ideas about how to approach the change that you have ahead of you. But first, let me just give a brief introduction to who we are. So inlumi is a consulting and services organization. We focus around EMEA. We're in the 12 countries you can see in front of you. The core of our business is the implementation of EPM technologies. We work with some of the market-leading vendors that are out there. We blend advisory skills and capability to help enhance and add more value to our technical delivery. We provide services for hosting, technical and functional support, and we provide solutions to add additional value for things like IFRS 16, tax provisioning, Pillar 2, or enterprise financial consolidation as a way of adding more value to the implementations we do for the investments that you make. So that's who we are as an organization. What I wanted to start with was an example from an organization that's been through this type of transformation journey and describe the process they went through and some of the benefits that they achieved. This one's about an organization called Autoliv. You might not have heard of them as a brand name, but there's a 70% chance your steering wheel, your seatbelt, the airbag is made by them. So they specialize in that car safety equipment and manufacturing. But therein lies their challenge. They can only sell as many steering wheels as the manufacturers make cars. So for them, it's all about optimizing their supply chain. So that's trying to answer these strategic questions more accurately and more easily. Should you make something or should you buy it? How do you optimize your internal value chain? Which processes or products drive the most variance in profitability? How can you best influence those? So what can you do to influence your supply chain to improve the performance of the organization? They have another challenge, and that's that they have a number of different systems across their architecture that allows them to do their financial reporting plus their operational supply chain reporting and planning. So these lots of different technologies. It's complicated. They're not connected. They lose granularity and accuracy as it moves through the process, and they can only allocate cost at a really high level, which inhibits the ability to make these strategic decisions. And even if you clean up this architecture and you present it in a more logical way, you can still see all of the different platforms there. They all have different license agreements, different levels of granularity, different teams and skills use them, have to maintain them. They're only connected by Excel. It takes time to push the data through this process. And again, you lose this granularity, you lose the accuracy, which then impacts your decision making. So the project was to bring all of this onto a single platform, to remove the number of different systems, to increase the level of granularity to a very low level of detail, allow the allocations to happen at this low level, and roll it all the way up to the consolidation, the group financial and management accounting and reporting. So the project delivered all of that into a single architecture. You then speed up the process, you connect it all so it's more unified, you increase the granularity, which helps increase the accuracy, which helps increase and improve your decision making. So in terms of benefits and outcomes, what this did was create an end-to-end digital model for the organization, unified operational planning and financial planning. As an organization, you'll be doing both. The question is, how easily can you connect the two sets of data and the two types of granularity? This was a single source then for that sales and the volumes. It allowed them to do a rolling forecast, so all parts of the organization can now forecast to a consistent level of granularity on a consistent frequency. So before, they couldn't all manage it the same number of times a year to the same number of periods into the future. Now that's all aligned. That gives them both for actuals and for forecast a full P&L, so the full EBIT, slice and dice analysis from a part number all the way up to a plant and into group, and it gives them that slice and dice as an organization.
So as mentioned by Ash, what we see is that these systems are already out there for a while and are really fit for purpose. They are great systems that do what they need to do. But like some of them, there's a time that they come to an end, like SAP BPC. That's already mentioned several times by SAP that there will be an end of life. Same for SAP FC, which is also mentioned to be end of life. Oracle, HFM, what we see over there is that it's still out there, and also the time to be available is extended. At the same time, there are no really big new developments in it, and same counts for IBM Controller, which is already out there for a while, but also no major investments are done already for many years in order to improve the project, but they still do what they need to do. However, what do we see is that requirements change over time, as we also saw in the example provided by Ash concerning Autoleaf, and here are some examples of it. Mostly what we see is that the data model is not supporting the steering model anymore, and next to that there is a need for more analytical value, so more granular data needs to be captured. Also, what we see is that there's a need to automate processes much more, as there is still a lot of Excel in between, or error-prone processes are there. So workflow capabilities are limited, and standardization is then difficult to provide. And what we see is then multiple applications are used, and there's a wish to simplify that. So mostly what we see is that also over time, this system has, let's say, outgrown themselves, are much more complicated with a lot of new additional things around it, or with complex business rules. And even they are expensive to maintain, with even decreasing resources available, as people are no longer available to support these systems, and there are not that many new people coming in who wants to work with these kind of systems. So the technology is becoming legacy and not always used anymore as the right tool for the right job. So that's what we see. Next to that, there are some drivers for change, which are, let's say, externally and what we see in the market. So we have combined these into these 4 megatrends, where technology by itself is an enabler of change. We now also see with new technology, with advancements in artificial intelligence and machine learning, that it's a driver of change itself. Just take a look at ChatGPT, how that has changed the way of working, also, especially if you have kids who are going to school, what impact that change has made towards the way how they are using it in their schoolwork. At least I see that at home. Second to that, we also see a skill set revolution, because within the customers or within your organization, the customers you have as a CFO office, they are asked much more from you, not only about control, but also to provide insight into what's happening in the business. So for that, we see the role evolving towards business navigators. Second to that is also that there's a focus shifting from not only looking at the profit, but also to purpose-driven value creation. That's also broadening the scope in what needs to be captured and going through the CFO office for reporting. If we talk about tax, global minimum tax, or ESG, for example. And next to that, there are talent challenges. So how do you make sure that you can attract and retain top professionals? That's by also providing them the right tools that they can work with. Also, there are still the evolving regulatory compliance. I already mentioned about tax and ESG, but also IFRS 18. If you need to report IFRS, then also IFRS 18 is upcoming, which has a major impact on the way how you need to report your income statement, for example. So with all these changes, you see that the responsibilities and capabilities continue to expand within the CFO office. So there's a lot to do, as you can see over here. And do you still want to use fit-for-purpose solutions for that? And also with new things, creating more silos of data. So data integration is needed, reconciliation of data is needed. Or is this something you can think about of, okay, maybe we should take a different approach?
The first thing you can notice is the kind of good news and the bad news. The good news is this is a sort of third generation technology for most of the vendors, which means it's already very mature, it's really good, and you can find lots of good choices. And that's sort of the bad news as well, which is there's lots of choices in the market. So how do you know which one's best for you? What we're showing here on the screen now is a Gartner and Nucleus Research view. So it's an analyst view. So that's really good as a starting point. There's plenty more to discuss on that front. Again, if you contact Marco and I, we can talk you through a bit more of the data as it goes below this level. The few bits I draw attention to. So the first real question, I think, is whether you're looking for something that's purely focused on FP&A, so budgeting, planning and forecasting, in which case you can look at the right-hand Gartner quadrant that you can see on the screen in front of you. So you can choose from all of the dots that's available there. If you're looking for a platform, though, that's equally good at consolidation as it is at budgeting and planning, then you need to look at where the sets of dots intersect. So very clearly you see in the quadrant in the middle, on the top right, you've got three main vendors that are quite a long way distant from the rest of the field. So the first bit of choice that Marco and I always provide when we're helping people interpret and understand these is if you're in the market for a platform, there are three out-and-out market leaders, as you can see clearly in front of you there. There's lots of research that sits beneath this. There's kind of customer views and our own experience as well, which I'd encourage you to contact us and draw from. When it comes to then the characteristics that define the technologies that we're talking about, so the dots you saw on the previous screen, so there are four areas which sort of simplifies how you can think about it. The first one is, of course, it's deployed in cloud. You buy it software as a service. That's very different from legacy technologies where there's a completely different model commercially, completely different model architecturally. The good thing here is this means it's more scalable, so it can grow more easily with you. It's easier to upgrade and maintain, and all of that is owned and done by the software vendor as part of your subscription. So again, you have to own and manage much less of the problem for yourself. The next characteristic is then they're a single platform. That means they're good at more than one thing. So the legacy technologies that Marco mentioned a couple of slides ago, so they're really good, but they're only really good at their own defined purpose. So consolidation, you could blur the edges perhaps slightly with some of the things you did on the, say, forecasting side, but really they're based on the concept of commonality and they're really good at consolidation, and you can't go much beyond that. Whereas now you're buying a platform that's good at consolidation, budgeting, planning, forecasting, and many other activities I'm going to talk about in the next slide. The next characteristic is then almost exactly that, which is with your subscription in your acquisition of a new platform, you can expect pre-built applications. Some of this is about speed and agility, so you can have quicker time to value. Most of it, again, for me, is about reducing the amount of responsibility you need to take as an organization to manage these platforms. So again, more of the problem is owned proportionally by the vendors than you had in the past, where it was all owned, maintained by yourself. The last point here is then around the volume of data. Because the architecture is modern, it's totally different, it's in the cloud, and how they've designed these platforms, they're really good at handling a far greater volume of detail. In the past, when we used to load either flat files or even more sophisticated integrations with ERP systems, you'd have sort of 2,000-3,000 records. You try and squish the amount of data in the trial balances down as much as possible to be able to improve performance on consolidation. Now the opposite's true. We want to increase the volume to add analytic value, to add operational planning and insights, to connect those things together with the financial processes that you have and add more value to your implementation. So now you can load sort of millions of records and see sort of decent performance that goes with it. So it's a totally different choice that you have to make when it comes to architecting these solutions. So the next slide that we have presents, in a view, all of the different things that you can consider today as part of your return on investment. So the core you can see in the teal box in the middle is what we traditionally used to think of as EPM, consolidation, budget implied forecasting, allocation. So that was the core of it. It's quite a big scope, a very important one. Now that's the heart of all of the platforms that you can buy, but they can also cover the activities you can see in the white boxes above the line as well. So balance sheet reconciliations, IFRS 16, Pillar 2, tax provisioning, scenario planning, ESG, all of these capabilities and pre-built value comes with the platforms that you buy. So again, you can consider a much wider range of scope to add value to your implementation. It's not about doing it all at once, but it's about understanding where you're going to find value and helping that drive your selection of tools and platforms on the market. Everything below the line is about the volume that I talked about a second ago. So you can add more data to drive more value analytically. You can also add more data to connect if you find value there. Operational planning and forecasting places to your financial planning. So then we can't do any presentation at the moment without talking in some way about AI, machine learning, and of course we should talk about them. So we've pulled out some data here that there's lots of different sources for information at the moment. The messages from this one, as you would expect, 70% of organizations intend to make some kind of investment in AI and machine learning in the next 5 years. 33% of those will do it within 2 years, and 29% of the survey base are working on it right now. So it shows kind of where it is really, which is the majority are going to do something. And there's quite a lot actually, and a growing percentage of those that have already started. We see lots of the activities in front of you where people are finding the value. There's a lot around efficiency and accuracy. And then the section on the right there talks about the acceleration benefits when you're embarking on some kind of finance transformation. Obviously, it's all data related. You can split it into two broad categories, I think. One part is around the data quality. The other part is around the sort of predictive capabilities in different categories. I think that's how I interpret it. There's fairly similar response ratings against all of those. I think there's not too much in them. They're the two broad categories that I'd use to interpret. Our experience, we are seeing it come more frequently. We've got a number of examples that you can see in front of you on the slide that's just coming. So these are organizations that have taken some form of value from machine learning or predictive capabilities. The common characteristics really are that they're trying to speed up a process, improve its efficiency by doing that. So you need less effort to do the task, and then increase accuracy to go with it to improve the decision making. So there's the three categories that to some extent all of these examples take advantage of. They're all based on, as you'd expect, leading platforms that we talked about inside the market, Tagetik, OneStream and Oracle being the main three that we see driving the most advantage here as it is today. You can obviously find it in some of the other platforms out there as well. So they're the three areas that they're looking at, so the efficiency, the accuracy, and the speed of which they're delivering these things. The change I think that is happening is because the capabilities exist inside the systems now, we're seeing these, rather than being delivered after the main platform implementation, we're seeing AI machine learning form part of a design that is then a more embedded part of the roadmap. Again, I think the question has changed between will machine learning or AI deliver something faster, more accurate, more efficiently? I think that the results that we're seeing is that that's always the answer, yes. But what we're also seeing is the organization needs to change in terms of process, in terms of people, in order to be able to take advantage of it. So most aren't able to just slam in something that's faster and more efficient. That sounds simple, but it does involve some process change as well. So where we're seeing it done most successfully is those that consider it in front of their design as part of their purchase of a new platform, and then delivering it inside a sort of value-based roadmap. When we think about EPM today, it's moved on, it's changed. We call it intelligent performance management. We talk about technology as a great catalyst and a rally point for change, but it's not the only thing that matters. It's also about the role that you play with regard to data, as a finance function, helping the organization navigate. You can consider the integration with processes that span across the organization, as we talked about with supply chain. And then all of this, when done most successfully, is because it has a strong and proactive talent management and change management agenda. Again, that's where we're seeing the most successful organizations, is when it's sort of a people-based agenda and they're driving the most value about the changes you can make in people's roles and the time they're spending on which activities based around technology, data, and the connection of processes around the organization. We talk about it a lot on our website, on our LinkedIn channel. There's lots of resources there I'd encourage you to take advantage of.
So how can you prepare for this change? We have, let's say, some kind of methodology for that. There are quite some aspects you can take a look at, and these aspects are irrespective of any software you are going to use, and also can be done already before you start an implementation. I will explain it in a little. So what's important is that you onboard the right people. I call it the dream team, to make sure that you have the right people all together who have the business, financial process, financial knowledge, process knowledge, and IT knowledge with some data savviness. So they really know what's going on in your business, but also in all the financial processes in your organization. Then it's important to know where do you want to go to. So that means that I think it's important to have an end in mind. Where do you want to go to? How do you get there? If you know also already where you are right now. So that's an important step into this process. Then it's all about governance, because it's a project that impacts the organization, at least the entire financial organization within your company. And that means that you need to make sure that things are arranged in a really well way, but also if you start an implementation, in most cases, a party like us is involved in that, we can help out on it to make sure that there will be a successful project. But that also means that there is an agreed target operating model after go live. So how do you make sure that you can maintain a new system, but also the new processes that come along with it? That data, of course, is very important. The most successful projects I've done is where we took enough time beforehand to take a look at the data model and the definitions. So what's needed based on the information needs, the steering model you have as an organization, to make sure that the data is there with the right definitions, etc. So that's a very important part. Then the process. Not only to see, okay, what are the shortcomings, the bottlenecks we have in the processes right now. So how can we leverage an implementation in order to make sure that we will have a very good new to-be process where we can automate much more. And also you can take a look already at the fact, okay, what are the key KPIs we want to report? What kind of reports do we need to provide? Make sure that there's a project initiation document. So as I said again, these are the kind of activities how you can get ready for change. And these things can be done irrespective of any software you are going to use. But also if you do that beforehand, you will see that you are ready to perform the project. And also it will help you when you are selecting new software, because the things we are creating over here will also be reusable during the software selection and later on during the implementation. So in order to get to a vision, we have some tools for that. And this is, let's say, a maturity model that has been created. On the top, you see, okay, where are you in the maturity? We call that fragmented, connected, integrated, and intelligent. And then there are some things on the side, like where you are in the case of how have you organized yourself concerning the people, concerning the data, processes, and technology. And then when I show this, then people immediately start to reflect and say, okay, we are a bit, let's say, between connected and integrated. And they will start explaining, okay, that's where we are. And also for your vision where you want to go to, it's not necessarily, of course, that you need to be intelligent right away, but the first step could be to at least make sure that everything is integrated. So this is used in a way to set a vision and to make sure to identify where are you right now, so what are the steps we need to make in order to get there.
So we approach this in quite a standard way in terms of methodologies. We have a fixed way of doing it that allows it to work in a very structured process, 3 main steps. All of it really is about driving alignment between where you are now, where you're trying to get to across your stakeholders, and an understanding of what's going to drive the most value in terms of roadmap, therefore what's the business case that sits behind it. So all of it's geared up to do that. We have these 3 main parts: the diagnostic and vision. Where are you now? Where do you want to get to? What are the choices you have in front of you? How are you going to choose between them that's going to drive the most value? Therefore, what's your plan to deliver against that, and the business case that would underpin it? So that's the approach that we take, and it helps organizations kind of move through this. Either this can include technology selection, or this can be considered as sort of pre-design work that helps inform and then structure a subsequent technology platform choice.
So as I said earlier, it's important to have a vision and then begin with the end in mind. And this is a way how to present it after the work has been done, that to show, okay, this is our vision, mission, this is what we want to accomplish, like being a world-class finance organization by 2026, 2028, whenever you think that's in a timeline feasible for you. In order to do so, there are some guiding principles and key success factors important. Guiding principles are about the things that needs to be there to secure that you will get to the end state, and the key success factors are things you need to arrange in order to have a successful project, like there's a budget, the right resources, etc. Another way to present this to show a new perspective or a better perspective, and that can be shown by, okay, what are the things we are going to eliminate? Make sure that we have less intensive data reconciliation tasks, or even not at all anymore, because everything is in one platform. Or reduce a number of things to make sure that there's an improvement in that area as well, because you have reduced all kind of hidden costs. So the total cost of ownership will be much lower. It can also be that you can raise particular things, especially around being the strategic financial leadership that the CFO office ought to do, to become the business navigator, that you are helping the business in order to gain insight and tell the story around the data around it, or even create new things like unified processes or new platform that not only provides the financial side of it for consolidation, budgeting, planning and forecasting, but also extend it towards ESG, CSRD and the tax platform for global minimum tax. As what we see is that the processes are similar, but also there's overlapping data, it needs to be auditable, etc. And systems like mentioned before by Ash from Oracle, Tagetic or OneStream, they provide all kind of capabilities also on the auditing side, as that's the background where they are coming from. So there are some lessons learned we took from projects. I already mentioned some of them, so I will highlight only a couple of here because it's part of the way how we are working. So one thing I think is very important is that if you are implementing a new solution, then also take a look at your processes. I've seen many times that there are quite some inefficiencies. They have grown over time. So with a new technology, it provides you the time also to take a step back and take a look at, okay, maybe we need to do things in another way. Moreover, we want to automate as much as possible. As one of the guiding principles, actually no manual intervention is allowed anymore. So that's an important one. Also, what we see is that change management, of course, is very important. That's why I showed the previous slide with showing a vision, showing a better perspective and keep on communicating that. Then it's important that you have dedicated resources. Take enough time for the design to make sure that once you start an implementation, that everything is already quite clear, or actually very clear before you start building. So you don't need to revisit decisions all the time because there's additional new insight. No, think about it beforehand. So you make sure that you have a very efficient implementation, because also you keep things very simple. And then at the same time, you can also take a look at in the process of compiling all the risk requirements, etc. How ready is the organization for that change? Are there some things also we need to take into account to make sure that we have a successful implementation? Because it's about the people, processes, and technology, of course. Another example we would like to provide to you, also to make it tangible, is from a company out there in the Nordics, a food retailer. It's not the only thing they are doing. They also have some financial services and runs a property management business. But we want to take you through the journey they took when leaving their legacy system and moving to a modernized EPM platform. So actually, it started with the fact that they want to modernize and improve the accuracy of their financial planning and analysis processes. So they also looked at their processes and wanted to make a change, implement a rolling forecast, work driver-based, aligned with the strategic plan. And at the same time, as you can see on the right-hand side, overcome some of the pain points, like there were disjointed data models, as you can see from the architecture, all kind of manual mapping, manual data loads, etc. So the total cost of ownership was also increasing, data quality issues, and especially the frequency of changes. Because if you need to make a change, let's say in the chart of accounts, you need to update all the other systems as well to make sure that they are aligned. And they couldn't do that without moving towards new technology, because the goals they have set, it was mandatory for them to move towards a modern platform. Because they also realized, okay, if we start this process, we also want to make sure that it's not only about budget forecasting data, but also our actual data needs to be improved, and we want to align actually these data models. So that's why they also decided to modernize and improve the accuracy of their financial close. And as you can see over there, in order to do so, they introduced a new platform in which they encapsulated these two processes as a first step. And later on, because they had that vision, what we want to accomplish, they created a roadmap, and then in various steps, they improved what they wanted to do into that new platform. So it was about then, if you have your FP&A process, okay, then you can start to use that also for predictive analytics, if you have the data for that, etc., and the processes in place. Same counts for the account reconciliation and IFRS 16. They were also added towards the platform. After that, for their consolidation, they had the acquisition register, so that was implemented there as well. As a next step, because they have the data, they did an experiment with machine learning to make sure that, okay, how can we leverage that modern platform with the data we have also to get even much more accurate forecasts, and then use what they learned during that phase to how they can expand that later on with the adoption of machine learning. And also what we have implemented over there last year was the new global minimum tax for tax reporting pillar 2, but also country by country reporting. And they are thinking about, okay, what could be next step, for instance, ESG, to encapsulate everything into a single platform.
The last example we've got to share with you, organisation called Sandvik. So they're really good at building the drill bits, the tools that create holes or sort of bore out bits of material to help the drilling. So they're really good at making those. They do it on lots of different things. So the chassis for the iPhone, the little screws that go inside your glasses. There's millions of holes that go into the jumbo jets that we see out there in the world flying over us in the sky. And if you can create drill bits that don't wear out or wear out less frequently, that are really a lot more efficient in terms of drilling those holes, you can save a lot of cost. You can improve your production a lot. Even the components inside zips, help are made using materials and stuff from Sandvik. So it's a really fascinating business. But again, similar theme as you saw with the other organisations, they have some challenges to overcome. So when they consider their data and systems landscape, it's really complicated. So there's 20 different, although there used to be over 20 models that were needed to support their group reporting and planning processes. They were on BPC, so an older technology that has an end of life and goes out of date. The maintenance of the solution creates lots of key person dependencies, and there's lots of moving parts that you have to try and put a lot of energy and structure around to get them to move in sync, because there's all these different components. The upload is really manual. There's not any integration, which means you don't have any of that traceability. So the project was move all of this estate, this complexity onto a single platform. The core of what they were doing was around acquisition register. It was around the group reporting, which is the bulk of the model. So that was both for planning, forecasting, and group actual reporting, and then also looking at their tax provisioning and pillar 2. Where they were getting the data and how they were getting it into it was also a really important part of the value they wanted to deliver. So if we look at the outcomes, so the benefits they had, so it was that one-click integration that went from source systems, of which they had a lot, so they weren't standardized on single ERP. They wanted to create the visibility, they wanted to reduce the effort to be able to do that, improve the traceability. So how do you know what came out of the source systems is what went into the target, and what kind of audit trail do you have between them? So all of that's automated now, supporting the audit process. They wanted to be an enabler for future programs. So we've talked a lot about the different types of things you can do. We've talked a bit about AI and machine learning. So these aren't things you can easily just adopt. They require a modern platform that's ready to receive this new functionality. So everything we've talked about today, and we can see it in this example that we're talking about now, what the problem they were solving at the beginning was really important. So there was a lot to do, a lot of value to be had, but it was also about the future. What else can the roadmap look like? An example Marco gave you, he talked about this program of change. So again, it's not about the big bang necessarily. It's not even about knowing all of the changes you're going to make as you move forward. It's about being ready to adopt and be able to move more efficiently and better support the organization as you move forward. The quality of the reporting they had was also be able to improve, because you're simplifying and reconfiguring that process to make it more optimal, to again reduce as much as possible some of the manual effort, using solutions wherever possible to be able to do that. It was a really big user base, 1,300 users, that required a lot of change management. So those examples, they're just quite high level. There's lots of others we could have drawn from, but we hope you find some value in them. In terms of closing messages and thoughts that we have, so there were a couple of questions and an offer I wanted to make. So my question would be to you: where will your organisation be sort of 5 years from now? What's it trying to aim at in terms of growth, and what's the most valuable contribution you as a finance organisation can help the organisation and the journey and path that it's on? And when it comes to change, this is a path you need to follow. It's something that you are going to do. So the question really is around when. So how much control and time do you need to allow to this process to drive the value you're looking to achieve, and when's the right time to start? In terms of an offer from our side or a suggested next step, we'd be more than happy to facilitate a workshop. So we could include some of the content that we've described today for a broader set of stakeholders to help create some inspiration, a common understanding for where you are now, what a vision might look like, and therefore what could a roadmap be to come afterwards. So there's a type of workshop we do very often, and it's an offer that we'd like to make to you. If you'd find value, please contact either Marco or I or anyone else in the inlumi organisation. That's it from us. Thank you very much for your time and attention. Please feel free to ask any questions, and I hope you've found it valuable. Thank you.
Thank you.